Now I get to tell you about our trip. So I've titled the message for such a time as this. Um, I'm just going to start and go way back to where it all started. In fact, it started at Life Fest last year, July of 2023. It blows my mind to think that it was 10 months time between where the first discussion started and when we left. There is no better way to make time fly, I am convinced, than to plan a missions trip to another country, because I don't know where those 10 months went, like just here and gone, just like that. So it was at Life Fest. So Bob was speaking at Life Fest, and while we were there, Kim and Steve, and they're here with us today, they invited us to do dinner at their campsite. And so we did, and it was just a really, really nice way to wind down and just have a good chat. And so to tell you who Kim and Steve are, so Kim is a neonatologist that I had the privilege of working with for 20 plus years at the hospital that I work in Appleton. And Steve, her husband, worked for Life Promotions and worked a lot with Life Fest. And in fact, the missionaries in Africa, Dave and Jen, Dave also worked with Life Fest. And I believe that Steve took Dave's place in Life Fest roughly when Dave went to the mission field. And so there's this whole connection here. So when I can't seem to open my water in just 1 second. Get very dry and very shaky. So I'll try to avoid both of those. So we were just chatting and thinking of we wanted to be able to, we were just kind of chatting about how our kids are just a bit sheltered. Like they get out, they see things outside of Wisconsin, but typically not really outside the US. And how eye-opening it was for me when I was younger and I went to El Salvador and I saw the way people live 100% different from the way I knew life, and it was life-changing for me. And so we were talking about how it would be great to get the kids out and get them a little bit of what life is like for other people. And Kim mentioned, well, we should go to Africa. We should go feed the babies. And ever since she said that, I could not get that out of my head. And so I think it took a couple months before I was like, okay, can you send me this link? Can you send me the web page? I just want to know more about these people in this ministry. And so I went to, hold on, let me use my clicker. I went to the web page. So Mahali Pa Maisha is the ministry. And I was blown away by post after post after post of babies that had been abandoned in every way imaginable and found and taken in by this ministry. I just needed to go there. I needed to be able to see what that was all about, and I just wanted to be there so bad. So that's where it started. And this is the logo. So apologies in advance. My PowerPoint's pale in comparison to what Bob does. So you get a nice white background with some clip art, but it is what it is. So Mahali Pa Maisha. So just to tell you a little bit about this ministry. So this is from their website, their mission statement. Mahali Pa Maisha is Swahili, and it means place of life. They show the love of Jesus Christ and share his hope by enriching the overall holistic health of abandoned babies and vulnerable children. They believe that every abandoned child deserves to be healthy and have their own Christian forever family that will enable them to reach their full potential for long-term success in life. Their goal is not to keep these babies. Their goal is to rescue them, get them healthy, and then get them connected to their forever families in Africa. They believe that every vulnerable child deserves to have their basic needs met and an opportunity to reach their full potential for long-term success in life. They are a place of life, a Christ-centered mission organization with a focus on abandoned, orphaned, and vulnerable infants and children. They provide care to rescued babies and promote essential life-enriching assistance for vulnerable children. They train and empower adults to be able to better care for the children under their keep. It takes a village. We are saving children from long-term physical and emotional damage due to abandonment. They stand that every child is given an opportunity to live a healthy life, knowing that they are valued and deserve their basic needs to be met. They do it because no child should go hungry or drink dirty water or not have their basic needs met or not know the truth of Jesus Christ or lack a clean bed or die from preventable illness or ever know a loving embrace or grow up without a supportive family. They know they cannot save them all, but they can save this one. And this also really, really spoke to me. So what that means is, I don't know if you've heard the story of the starfish, but I'm going to read it. An old man was walking on a beach one morning after a storm. In the distance, he could see someone moving like a dancer. As he came closer, he saw it was a young woman picking up starfish and gently throwing them into the ocean. "Young lady, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?" "The sun is up, the tide is going out, and if I don't throw them in, they will die," she said. "But young lady, do you not realize there are many miles of beach and thousands of starfish? You cannot possibly make a difference." The young woman listened politely, then bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it in the sea. It made a difference for that one. That is why when you go back and look at their logo, there are a couple starfish up underneath that tree, and that they understand they cannot save them all, but they will make a difference for this one. What makes them unique is their focus on empowering and releasing orphans to be allowed to grow up knowing Christ and what it means to be loved unconditionally. Through high standards of care and attention to legal requirements, they are advocates for the smallest victims who do not have a voice. That is what drew me to this organization. So that's a little bit of the background of why Africa and why this place. Then I thought I'd mention just a little bit about our team and how it came to be. So I initially thought that it would consist of spouses and that we would go kind of husband and wife together and, a bunch of us together. That is until I learned that Bob was not interested in meeting up with any of the big bugs in Africa. No interest. So these first two on the left, I took myself. Personally, I'm more appreciate the big bugs. I don't like the little ones that can crawl in little spaces and I don't see them. If you're big and huge, I can find you and get you. But so I had the privilege of meeting the first two on the left myself. Sauce, another member of our team, took the other picture. I don't know if you can see it very well, but he's there and he takes up the large chunk of the center of that picture. It's an orb spider, I learned. Oh, and hi, Dave and Jen and everybody in Africa. They're watching right now. So I got a little lesson on the orb spider. Apparently they're harmless. And lots of lizards and also like we keep them alive because then they can eat all the big. But so Bob not interested. I realized, okay, this isn't going to be a team of husbands and wives going together necessarily. So after Kim and Steve had a pool party with all of the NICU nurses at their house, and I kind of was just like, hey, I'm thinking about putting a team together. Are you good with that? And so then she mentioned it to the nurses that were just at the table there at the pool party, and there was a resounding, yeah, like I'd love to do that. I want to be a part of that. So we created a Facebook thread of like sort of interested people, and as I kept adding the people who were interested, it grew and grew and grew. And it got to the point of like, it was all these NICU nurses who wanted to be involved, and it was too big of a team. they take like 10 is kind of maxing out the size of the team that can go. And so it was sort of too big of a team for Africa and too big of a team to let go out of the unit for 2 weeks. We kind of had to keep staff there to take care of those babies. So over time, though, one by one, they had to say no for financial reasons, for the timing of the trip, the length of the trip away from family, and other appropriate reasons, kids who were themselves working on overseas trip. But even despite that, I knew that God was pulling together a team that he would choose. And in the end, none of the NICU nurses ended up coming, and that's okay. So I just started to ask others as I felt were being led on, were being put on my heart to ask. And so then it was only after a good time into that planning I realized that I'm a pastor's wife, and this then looks like maybe it should have been a church team going. So some may have been disappointed that it wasn't a church event, and I do apologize for that. It really changed from what I had initially envisioned it would. And who knows, though, perhaps one day we will take a church trip there together. We just got to work on Bob, getting him okay with those dung beetles and just huge spiders. And he's watching as well. He's doing the tech things himself from Nashville. So hi, love. So the final makeup of the team ended up being these beautiful ladies here. And in the background is Mount Kilimanjaro. We're about 60 miles from Mount Kilimanjaro here. So the team was made up of myself and my mom. That was a huge blessing to have her take in this privilege with me. Cass, who's in the front here, she was a NICU nurse with us for a while, and then she went on. She became a nurse practitioner. So she was like my partner in crime there, and I'll talk about that later on. But she knows inpatient, outpatient, and she knows kind of all the ages of patient care. And her mom came with, Mary, who's behind her. Little did I know, Mary has been a volunteer with us in the NICU for a while. And it wasn't until Cass called me and said, "Hey, do you have an extra space? My mom would like to come along. She's Mary. She volunteers." I was like, "What? Oh my goodness, absolutely. Like, how cool is that you two could go together?" So we had a two mother-daughter duo. And then we had Sauce. And so Sauce is there behind Mary. And a lot of you guys know Sauce. Sauce used to go to our church for a while until she moved to Missouri. Sauce's sister, EJ, is actually a missionary with her husband, Phil, in Africa, maybe like an hour and a half from where we were. They work through African Inland Missions, AIM. In fact, our ladies group supported and helped. We didn't support EJ necessarily, but when we learned that $10 a day feeds a family of 4 in Africa for a week, we pulled together and said, yeah, I can give $10 a day. Actually, like, look, I'll give $40 a month if I know that a family of 4 is being fed for that whole month. I can do that. And so a number of us did that for quite a long time. We kind of funneled the money to Sauce, and then Sauce funneled it to her sister EJ, and then EJ was able to give it directly to the people that she saw were in need. So we knew 100% of our money was going exactly where the need was. And that was such a fantastic plan. And I think there may be a couple of you that still are doing that. And so so that's huge. So in fact, Sauce was able to connect with her sister in Africa while we were there, which was very, very cool. And then Alana, some of you know Alana, so she is behind my mom in this picture. Alana comes to our church here as well. She's got a lake home here in like on Spencer Lake, and so she came with us. Alana is also kind of one of the drivers, because when I first had talked to Kim and Steve and then mentioned just the whole thing, she right away was like, well, when are you going and how much does it cost and how long are you going to be gone? I was like, Alana, this isn't even a thing. It's not even a plan right now. It's not a trip, but her excitement, I was like, oh my goodness, we have to do something with this. So it was great having her come along. And then Chris behind Alana. So Chris, Alana, and my mom all go to Christian Life Fellowship in Port Edwards church together. And Chris, I had just happened to see Chris at the Better Together conference that was held last year through the Assemblies of God women's team, which, by the way, mark your calendars, November 2nd is the next Better Together conference. And the women's director, Lori, does a really great job of trying to make these local for everybody. And so our conference, we're going to be just going to Appleton. So be sure to mark your calendars for that. A little plug there. So I had seen her and I reached out to her and I just think and she immediately said, yeah, this is, I would love to be a part of this. I think it's so great because each of these ladies can tell you their own testimony of how God placed this trip just at the right time in their lives and what went into their decisions to make this large time commitment to be part of the team. So it's fun because everybody's got their story. And so I encourage you to hear them out if you see them coming in at all. A couple more pictures of our crew. So this was, we were out on safari. We actually got to get out of the car and take little travels, but we had our guide with us, equipped with his gun in case any of the animals got crazy, which they didn't. It's good. And then this is one more team picture. This is at the end of our travels. We were in the airport waiting to board our plane for the 15-hour ride home. So a great group of ladies. And as I look back, it's very cool to think of how God had these ladies. This is not the team I put together. This is a team God put together because all the things that happened were just perfect for this team to be there and to go. So just a real quick of where in Africa, so everybody kind of has an idea. We were in Kenya, and more specifically Kitengela. And so it's very kind of on the east side of Kenya, very close to the equator. Craziest thing, like 6:30 in the morning, sun is up, 6:30 at night, it is down. And so it gets about 65 degrees at night and about 75 degrees during the day. And there's just this constant, like just there's no fluctuation. Now, granted, we were there for 2 weeks and that's my picture right now, but it was not crazy hot and it was not crazy cold for most people. I did end up with a sweatshirt and a hot chocolate for one night. And then we got this beautiful picture, which I thought was really cool on the airplane. Slowly but surely, we saw our plane getting all the way into Africa. And, it's just kind of odd, just a long flight. And you think, okay, surely we're close. And you'd pull up the picture and nope, still over water. Okay, more time, it's fine. So I thought, okay, if I'm listening to somebody talk about their trip, what would I want? Probably a lot of pictures and maybe just kind of a day by day of like, what exactly did you do there and where did you see God? So that's what I'm going to do. Just kind of a day by day. So you have a feel for what we did and what we encountered. So we got there on Wednesday. We left Tuesday morning at 7:30 out of Chicago. And then we arrived in Nairobi at about 10:30 Wednesday morning, the next day. Now, granted, Africa is 8 hours ahead of us right now. So they're listening to me now, but it's about a little after 6 p.m. their time. So we got there and we unpacked all of our stuff. So the supplies was a whole nother story. I won't get into it, but they were in all of our bags. We each got 2 bags. Kind of one bag was our supplies, and then the other bag was all of the supplies. And thank you in advance for all who gave and contributed to buying supplies. But we mixed them all together. And so we were just like, okay, we just kind of want our bags back. We want to know like where all of our stuff is. So we unpacked all the supplies. You can see some here in front of Mary, and then some more. There was just tables and tables and tables of supplies, and then we had supplies that were for the rescue center, and then supplies. We had three suitcases, two full of gloves and another one full of other medical supplies for the hospital, and then the suitcase in the front with supplies for another children's home that we knew we were going to be visiting as well. So then we were invited to go over to the rescue center to go meet the babies. But first, we all had to take showers and wash all of the travel off of us. So we got all cleaned up, and then we got to go over and visit. And so they do such a fantastic job. These babies are all beautiful, all loved, all very happy. And so just a couple of pictures of the snuggles that we got to give and the babies that we got to meet. They have close to 30, if not 30 babies right now, probably maybe 28 to 29, but lots of babies everywhere, but they were all just a joy to meet and to love. Then the main goal for that day obviously was to just stay awake, and so Jen did a really great job of hanging in there with us. She was just over at the team center chatting it up, trying to like keep all of our eyes open so that we would go to bed at a normal time, so that the rest of our trip was kind of not jet lagged. The next day we went to Cass and I went to Shalom Hospital. And so there are 3 hospitals in the Shalom system. We went to the Athi River, and we met some amazing people here. So Irene is on the left, and then Betty, and then Essie. And they just hung with us the whole day and helped us learn so much from them about what they do and how their practices are, and answered so many of our questions. And here is just a picture of one of the hospital wards. All I have to say is we have nothing to complain about. Okay, nothing to complain about. This is their an OR, and so we went in and snapped a picture, and then she brought out one of her friends, and so we snapped another picture. The bed in front is where they do the prep before the OR, and then the post operation recovery. So before and after is right there in the bed, and then they go out to the next room behind them for the procedure, and then just come back. While we were there, then the rest of the team got to have more baby time, and so just everywhere. So they bring out the chairs, the bouncy chairs, and the bumbos, and the what's it called, boppies, and put all the babies out there and give them some time, and then give us the opportunity just to love on them and play with them. And they're a very well-oiled machine. They have staff that's there 24/7 doing all of the things with the babies. And so they've really done it well. So a couple more pictures. So then there's a play yard, and where the babies just kind of can hang out, and slides and swings and all the things. So just a joy. The next day, we got to go back to the hospital again. So so thankful for Dave. He works tirelessly, I'm sure. It's one thing for us to prepare to go there, and then it's a whole nother ball game for them to prepare to receive us. And so lots of planning on his end and scheduling. And so I said, put us at the hospital first, so that like we might be able to go back if there's more things to do. So we were able to go back a second day, and this is there were multiple moments in this trip where God set in motion opportunities to take me far outside my comfort zone. A few days before we actually left for the trip, I was asked by Dr. Helen at the hospital to speak to the nurses of Shalom, as well as those of the other 2 hospitals that make up Shalom. So this is their video screen and their virtual meeting with the other 2 hospitals that were there. And I didn't realize it, but when we put the dates together for this event, not only did I cover Mother's Day, but it was also Nurses Week, and they do Nurses Week everywhere. I mean, there are nurses more than just in the U.S., and so we got to celebrate their Nurses Week as well. And so part of that was where they had asked me to come and speak. So as I asked more questions, I was to speak to all of the nurses of the hospital, not just the baby nurses, which I would have been super comfortable and fine with. But again, I do babies. I'm not one to speak to what the rest of the nursing world does. In fact, you can often find me saying I don't do big people. I've never taken care of an adult except for maybe in my clinicals before I graduated. This, on top of not knowing exactly where they needed encouragement in patient safety, was a bit harrowing to say the least. After the first day, though, it was clear that these, what the patient safety topics should be, but this left less than a day to kind of prepare any sort of talk. Fortunately, much of the patient safety topics were broad enough that they covered babies and big people. So that was very helpful. And then I was blessed to have Cass right alongside me in this journey. So I pulled her up with me, and she gave me the courage I needed to talk to all these people. And just her and I worked super well together. Her with her background in more broad patient care, and me with the babies. We kind of like looked at each other and confirmed different things, and it was wonderful. And so this is the whole group of nurses that I talked to in person. I'm honestly not sure what they needed to hear from that talk. As we learned days later, they probably know about all the patient safety pieces, not unlike everything we often know what we're supposed to do, but then it's the carrying out of the things we know we're supposed to do that sometimes is the clincher. But they need the means to be able to carry out many of the things that they know they're supposed to be able to carry out. So that was big. And here's the cake that they had to celebrate Nurses Week. They presented us with these beautiful blankets that had our names on them, and I much appreciate. Dr. Helen is there in the white, and so prayers for this whole organization and Miss Dr. Helen. She does all of the things. She's not specialized to any one unit. They do the whole hospital, but she has such passion and desire and drive to make things better. And so I'm super excited about what that looks like going forward. And then this lady next to Dr. Helen, her name is Dorcas. She is the kind of the leader of the leaders of the nurses in the hospital. So she's the go-to. Like there was one point where Dr. Helen said, "Dorcas, go do this." And it was big, and she kind of looked at Dr. Helen, but okay, so she's kind of the point person. And then beautiful Jen on the other end in white. Was there with us, and there was a potential that she wasn't going to come the second day, but Cass and I both looked at each other and said, "Oh, we're so thankful she was there." And she trusted she trusted Sauce to take care of the baby that was with them at the time, so that she could be there, because there was a lot of things kind of that went on that were like, just from a cultural standpoint, like what is this? Then the guy in the middle here, that's Dr. Helen's dad. He started this hospital system. So Dr. Helen is his daughter, and then he has a son also that runs another one of the hospitals. And this whole message was great, because their goal is to have all three hospital systems working together and doing the same thing, which is fantastic. And so I kind of feel like any of our efforts at this hospital will be threefold, because they will try to be doing the same thing at the other two facilities. And then it was lunchtime, and we were doing getting a tour from Phil here, and then we had to steal a chapati. So if anybody has not heard chapati, it's kind of like the best thing in Africa cuisine that I learned of, and it's just kind of like fry bread, but it's really good. And then the rest of the team got to do work. So they had just flooded before we came, and it was a lot of flood cleanup afterwards. So that was kind of a big piece of what we were able to do to help them out there. All right, more baby pictures. Just adorable and just so much of a blessing. And then our downtime kind of at the end of the day was very very nice as well, just being able to chat and connect with each other. All right, quickly. So never fear, that was not the only time that I was taken out of my comfort zone. The Bells work with a nurse practitioner that lives in Africa and coordinates clinics in the children's homes when they have teams that come in with medical background. So once again, I remind you, I don't do big people. This includes kind of anyone over the age of about like 3 to 4 months. My picture of this trip was that I would primarily be involved when we were at the hospital discussing newborn care, and then Cass would sort of do the other things primarily when it came to doing the clinics in the children's homes. But that all changed when I was watching everything get put in place for this first clinic. So this is Divine Providence. It's run by, I think, 2 or 3 nuns. And this is a children's home. And I think they may not get adopted out of here. They're just here until they get old enough to be on their own. And so I watched, and so everybody kind of took their places. Mary and Sauce would take temperatures and blood pressures, pulse ox measurements, and weights as everybody came in. And then Alana worked with Jen at the pharmacy, they called it, where the kids would get like a deworming medication and multivitamins and any other sort of things that we saw during our assessments that needed to be done. And then here is Sauce and Mary doing the blood pressures and things. And then my mom and Chris had the task of managing and sort of trying to corral all the kiddos while they were waiting to be seen. And so that meant a bit of hairstyling expertise. And so so they were the mannequins for the. And they absolutely loved it. They were like, "What kind of hair is this?" Right? Just like, I don't understand. And so they would sit down and kind of gather them all around and played ball with them. And then Cass was sitting at the table with her stethoscope and otoscope, and there was a space next to Cass with another otoscope. And the next thing I know, Jen was telling me that my spot would be assessing the kids as well. And as you can imagine, I quickly reminded her, I don't do big people. But she was totally fine with that and had me sit down anyway and do the things. And so Cass was my partner in crime, as I often looked to her for reassurance and reminders, like how we had to document assessments. Like, I don't do that. We just type it all in and magically it does its thing. And but we were on index cards, and so reminders on how to look at eardrums, something that we don't even do as nurses in the NICU. That's not even there. The doctors do those, and it's just once per stay at discharge for the baby. So I would dare say, though, that despite this, that was one of the highlights of the trip. Was a privilege. I was privileged to be able to sit down and look at all of those beautiful, beautiful kids in the eye and ask them how they were feeling and what they were dealing with. And I would dare say, yeah, that was one of the highlights of the whole trip. And then we were privileged to do it again at another children's home and for the kids at Mahali Pa Maisha. what an amazing thing. So that was that day, and it doesn't stop there. Being up here speaking to you is not exactly in my comfort zone either. But how can I turn down the opportunity to tell about what is happening in Africa and what we're looking forward to in the future? And then Wayne has also invited me to join him for a few minutes on the radio, and so that'll happen in a couple weeks. I think on the 19th, which I also appreciate as well, but also out of my comfort zone. So I'm much more prone to just being completely satisfied in my own corner of the world with a book, a blanket, a coffee, a cat, and just doing my thing. But that's not always how God has it. All right, so we'll kind of quickly go through. So we were able to take it in church. And so this was a church in Nairobi called Renewal Church. Fantastic pastor, fantastic message, just a really cool opportunity. And then we went to, there's the kids' church and the youth tent right outside. And me and Shaddy, he's the youngest of the Bells, and Cass there. And then we just went out to eat right near the market. And then we went shopping and got very scared. And we don't barter very well. And we don't do the things. So we were like, hey, we're done. Definitely a couple of these areas where we could have used sort of like a male figure. One of them would have been customs when they pulled me in and asked way too much money for the things. But praise God, we got so much that was given to us and donated that what they asked for was just kind of not as bad. But so there would have been nice. And then at the market, so we would just say, no, that's too much. Try again. But we were like, we don't have any money left. We have to go. We're out. The next day, more help at the rescue center, more playing with babies. Miss Rispa, she is one of the nurses that did work at Shalom Hospital, and so she's sort of like our in to say like, okay, what's happened at Shalom, and what do they need there, and how is that working? So she's very, very. It was fantastic to chat with her, and then more playing with babies. Guys, we're going to go way over. I have a lot that I want to tell you. So we'll just kind of go. I set my timer late, and now I have 33 seconds left. Just like tubby time, fantastic. Just the best. Again, just a well-oiled machine. And we got to meet this little one. So she was a rescue while we were there. She needed phototherapy, and we brought phototherapy equipment, and so we got to snuggle her just real quickly before she went under her phototherapy. And then this day we also started to do some assessments, and these two are like two peas in a pod. In fact, the bigger one took the stethoscope off Cass's chest and then put it on her bestie's chest to make sure that like she was getting checked out as well. And then we did a lot of charting and chai, we called it, after that night, that we checked on some of the kiddos. Then we decided, okay, we want to go back to the hospital. There's a few loose ends that we didn't quite tie up. So Dave dropped his things for the day and took us again out to the hospital. And it's a really bumpy road to get out to this hospital, guys. Like that's saying it nicely. The road is so bumpy that they don't use it. They drive off the road because so many big dump trucks use that road all the time to try to skip the way station. They wreck the road. The road's not even big enough anymore for two wheels of the car to fit on it. It's not even roadworthy for most cars, so that when we went to the hospital, Dave dropped us off the first two times, and then Jen, it was actually Dr. Helen's driver, drove us back, but had to stop at the gas station right before the super bumpy road where Dave would meet us then and pick us up in his vehicle to take us back down the bumpy road. And his back does not like the bumpy roads. And so to know that he took us again out to the hospital so that we could tie up all these loose ends was also helpful because we were able to get vaccines for 10 of the babies that needed it. This is crazy. Like they just Dr. Helen made a couple phone calls. Dave couldn't even get out all his words before she was on the phone and secured the vaccines and then got them, and then we put them in the cooler, and I'm like, oh God, now we have vaccines that are supposed to be cold and need to get back to the babies, but I got things I want to talk about. And so we quickly tied up loose ends. One of them was getting a picture with us and Dr. Helen, and another one was a couple of pictures on the unit, and just some clarifications and things. So that was fantastic. Then we got to come back and play bubbles with the babies. And the older ones in particular absolutely loved it. And you're always on the ground with them, like just until my mom like was in her element, just playing and playing and playing with these kiddos. And then this little one might have the same name as my youngest, and so he kind of took a little place in my heart. And so babies everywhere. So it was just so amazing just to be able to play and to help, and then just knowing that the staff was getting comfortable with us. And we did work sometimes. Like after a while, I sort of felt like we're going to the hospital or we're playing with babies, Cass and I particularly. But I did need to make sure like we got our boots on. We played in the guava trees and got bit by things. Then we got to visit the seeds in his garden. A fantastic place, started in '98 with a goal of just helping children abandon. They make sure that the children's physical, emotional, educational, spiritual needs are met. They have 30 kids. That's the most they'll take because they believe that that's the most that can be attended to in a day, basically a day for each child, and any more than 30 and you're too much. So this lady has done a fantastic job. This is one of their sort of greenhouses. They've filled water bottles with dirt and built a wall with the water bottles, so reused, and then it keeps cool inside. They've built this whole thing very kid friendly, like they've got a circle door and just everything. So that was the girls' rooms, and then the boys have their own place. Everything's kind of techie looking, and so then we got to do another clinic here and meet all of the kids, and they're all so happy. It was not difficult to leave seeds because they are in such good hands and in such loving hands. They do such a great job there. Just happy faces. We brought a Polaroid camera, and so my mom had the job of taking pictures of all the kids and giving them their pictures, and so they really enjoyed that. And then we got a bunch of shirts donated from foundations, and we logoed a few of them up. And so they were all 2T, and I don't think there were any 2T kids, maybe a few 2T, but she shoved those shirts on like all like 10 of these kids. Didn't matter, and they didn't care. They absolutely loved it. All right, we got to celebrate Jen's birthday while we were there, and do a few more babies. We learned how to process the guava that we picked. And there's the Bell kiddos that are there, just super fun. So we got to play with them every night. They came over, they played cards with us, just really, really a great group of kiddos. And then safari. So what you've been waiting for, the animal pictures. Just going to kind of go through these for you. This is our vehicle. So this is Francis, and he took us from the team building at Mahalipa Maisha. I think it was roughly 6 hours we traveled, and in our safari vehicle we traveled. And so we got to the lodge, which was gorgeous and overlooking this watering hole, which is where the hotel was overlooking the watering hole, but where our dining area overlooked the watering hole. So you could just sit there and eat and watch the animals, which was very difficult because like you'd take a bite and you'd want to get up and take another picture and take another bite. Wait, there's some more. But just phenomenal. And this elephant greeted us on our way out of safari. Just right by the window. It was as though he was saying goodbye. It was just the craziest thing. These are actual pictures. They look like I probably Googled them, but this is the Mount Kilimanjaro again. There's all of our team. So we popped our heads out of the safari vehicle, and giraffes, crazy looking birds. Kind of wanted to, like, I felt like I was on Jurassic Park a little bit, with, like, the animals popping out, the T-Rexes, or what's the Lion King. So just super cool. I mean, and this is just the tip of the iceberg of the animals that we saw. And then our last day there. So got to do some babies in the morning. And then Dave got a call of another baby number 341 for the Infant Rescue Center. And so we had the opportunity. So Cass and I hopped on this one. We were very gracious to the rest of the team for understanding. Felt very selfish a little bit for going, but we had the opportunity to see 2 more hospitals in doing so. So we saw a government hospital where this baby had been brought to, and then we saw another private hospital where we brought him for lab draws. So it was just a great opportunity to see them. Just more babies. So it was like a little pano that I took, like just the whole outside of the rescue center. And so this was their newest, just amazing to watch this whole process. So you see, he still has his IV in on one of those pictures. We just grabbed him and went, and there he is, kind of cleaned up and all smiley. So one of the things, this was one of the last pictures we took at the end. So just perfect with the 2 newest babies, and then Jen. A couple things. So God in Africa. So before we left, real quickly, okay, got a lot of things, but we asked for a lot of donations, and this company in particular, Dr. Brown's, gave us a lot of things. And right before we left, Jen said, I could really use some valves. They have just some particular valves, but Dr. Brown's doesn't sell them individually. They're choking hazards. And so I reached out and I was like, hey, they're asking for some valves, and I know you've already given a lot, so you can invoice us, whatever. And she said, no, I'll send you some. That's fine. But I had also told Jen and Dave that I felt like the use that they were looking for the valves, maybe not the perfect thing, that maybe a smaller size nipple would be better. But I just mentioned that to Jen and Dave, and I just simply asked Dr. Brown's for the valves. And she said, yeah, I'll send them to you. This was probably like maybe a Thursday. And then she said, I'll send them, but I can't get them in the mail until Tuesday of next week. But it was fine. Plenty of time. On Tuesday, I got in the mail 4 packages that consisted of 24 of these smaller nipples. And I'm like, wait a second, did I miss it? Did I actually send her the message that I thought that would be the right thing versus, and I look back and no. And so I sent her an email. I said, hey, we got these. Is that what you intended? I think that they would really be helpful, but I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a miss. And she said, I'd love to take credit for sending you those, but unfortunately I can't. You will be getting 50 bottles with valves and pacifiers, but I'm sending them out on Tuesday. She said, I think that someone higher knew that you needed those. And so, okay. And that's all I have for that. Like, that's, no one else came looking for them, nothing else. So we sent those along with us. Then another God moment was Eva. So on Sunday, we were at church, and my mom was sitting behind me, and I felt kind of the whole trip like I didn't ever really get to like sit next to her a whole lot. There was always like somebody else somewhere. I was like, oh, I could sneak back and sit by her, but I didn't. And And then shortly thereafter, another lady, the service had been going on for about 10 minutes. Another lady came in and said, "Is anybody sitting here?" I said, "No, you can sit here." And the pastor is very big on group discussions during his message. And so there was two different times where we got to get out of our comfort zones and kind of have conversation with people that we may or may not know. And in one of those, I learned that Eva worked for a patient monitoring company. And I was like, "Eva, we need patient monitors." And I didn't mention that, but like when I talk about resources in the hospital, they have no monitors to monitor their babies. I can't think of a bigger nightmare than if you turned off all of our monitors in the NICU. We would go crazy. Okay, you don't know how many times these monitors beep and the babies call your attention to what they need. They don't have that. And we know for a fact, watching these babies, they needed help that the nurses clearly had no indication that they needed. So I was like, "Oh, she works for patient monitoring." Well, come to find out, it was like bedside monitoring for quick assessments of like maybe like a cartridge where they would put blood on it, and they'd be quickly able to tell if a patient had HIV, hepatitis, TB, all the things. And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I think that's helpful, but that's not the kind of monitoring." And so I said, "Oh, you got me excited. I was hoping that, we just went to this hospital and they need monitors." She's like, "Oh, well, I used to work for GE in the Women and Families division. We use all GE monitors in the NICU. I'm super familiar with GE, and GE does a lot of neonatal care in their Women and Families and Women and Children's division. I can hook you up with somebody." "Yes, please." And so when I got home, I've already chatted with a lady for like a good half hour. And for all I know, she may have already done a site visit to Shalom to kind of give us a quote for the things that they need there. So you cannot tell me that that was not God who placed that lady there. There's a reason I didn't sit behind my mom. There's a reason I sat next to her. And there's a reason she has connections, because we were already thinking like, okay, we got to go home. We got to figure out how to get some pulse oximeters. We got to figure out how to like find the next team that's going. We got to provide for the fact that the customs is going to ding us and going to tax us on all of these expensive pulse oximeters. You're not going to be able to hide that. And so all of the things, but being able to just buy them in Africa will just be, it'll be a game changer. But we need money. So just wait. I'm not going to ask for money right now, but later. So anyway, God in Africa. So seeds, I mean, there's no way, after seeing how well cared for those babies were at Seeds in His Garden, it's not difficult to leave knowing they were in the hands and that God is there. Safari, you can't look at those pictures without seeing God in all of that and in all of His creation. Joyce and Risper, the nurses that are at the rescue center, and Dr. Helen and all the staff of Shalom and the rescue center, like God has placed each of these people where they are so they can make an impact in each of their areas of expertise. How exciting is it to think of working with them in the future? And then the Bells. These missionaries clearly have a passion, and they are such great examples of what passion looks like. Jen knows each and every one of the babies in her care intimately. She takes all of them into her house initially, helps them acclimate to a new routine, makes sure they're solid feeders, confirms they're healthy, and then releases them to the care of the staff of the rescue center, often at the same time as she's welcoming another little one into her home to start the process all over again. It is never ending. We might complain of our babies not sleeping through the night or not eating well, but it's just for a season. And for Jen and Dave, they do it again and again and again. In fact, like I told you, we had the privilege of welcoming that 341st baby into their care. I'm so thankful that we didn't need to board that day until 11:30 p.m. So there was ample time for us to be able to go same day as our flight and go pick up that little one. When Dave gets a call, to come get one, that baby immediately becomes his. And you have not known so much urgency as to watch this guy move when he gets a call to come get his baby. He cannot get to the hospital or the police station quick enough. It's as though once he receives the call, that baby's his, and it can't get into his arms quick enough. He knows all too well that until a baby is with him in his arms, there's risk that someone will walk away from the hospital or the police station and take that little one without anyone realizing it. When he arrives, they look for the Good Samaritan who brought the baby, and they're both gone. That happened while we were there. When we were waiting for this little one on our last day, it seemed like an eternity. We were told the paperwork would just be finalized, it wouldn't be long, but this is Kenya. Just a minute could really mean just an hour or more. Time definitely has a different meaning in Africa compared to what we are used to. We were brought to the newborn care unit only to find out there was no babies in that room. There was a lot of babies in the room next door, but they all looked like they had moms with them. Finally, somebody came back and Dave said, "We haven't seen him yet." And so a lady came out of the room with a whole bunch of other babies, and they're holding this perfect little boy wrapped in layers and layers and layers of blankets. They wrap these kiddos as though it's like 30 degrees out. And as soon as she came out of the room, she went back in with him. And so we're still waiting for the right paperwork. Dave stood at the intersection of the hallway, kind of like keeping his eye and making sure the staff are like moving and doing their thing. Cass and I waited just outside the room where the baby was to keep a close eye on him. And it turns out the person holding him was the Good Samaritan who brought him in a few days earlier. So when he finally had paperwork in hand, Dave was ready to get out of there with the baby. He still had his IV in, which you saw. It could have taken another hour for them to take out. So we were just like, no, just leave it in. It's fine. We'll take it out later. So they allowed the Good Samaritan walk out with the baby, at which time she declared she wanted to take the baby home with her. And that was in Swahili. And so the staff that walked her out looked at us and said, she wants to take the baby. And Dave quickly said, that's not an option. And as soon as that happened, I was able to take the baby. She handed him to me. And so I took him, and it melted my heart how relieved Dave was to see that by the time he had come around from unlocking the other side of the car, I already had the baby in hand. We drove away, heads down, no eye contact until we could get back to the main road, just to be sure nothing would put that baby in risk. That is passion, and that is what drives these folks to do what they do day in and day out. And I love being around people that have that kind of a passion. All right, so just a quick message, just to let you know, like, this is the tip of the iceberg. For our involvement in Africa, as I see this dream just starting to come alive. But we're called to be faithful in the here and now and trust God with the big picture. It's often tempting to want to know all that's in store for the future so we can just run and do our own thing and run the show by ourselves. But that's not how God operates, and I'm thankful for it. He asks us to be faithful in the here and now so he can work and will our lives as only he can. When I was in high school, we had classes where we were to write about our future careers and what we wanted to do when we graduate. I remember writing on my paper that I wanted to become a missionary. And my parents were both very involved in our lives, and I can remember my mom saying, with love, you can't just be a missionary. You need to do something first, and then you can go be a missionary. Of course, I didn't like that response at all. But I knew what she meant. I needed to develop a skill or a trade that I could take with me to benefit those who needed to know Christ. After a lot of deliberation, more conversations with my mom, I decided that nursing is something that sounded good. And now I'm seeing this part of God's plan work out to see my dreams of mission work starting to have their potential. I really feel like Esther. And this was the picture I could find. Apparently there's a documentary, which I really want to watch. when Mordecai came to her and said, "And who knows but that you have come to your position for such a time as this?" There are so many opportunities to help the babies and staff at Shalom Hospital. They're one of 3 in their system. It's exciting. The exciting part is that we go to when we went to listen to a presentation by the HR, where it's clear like that is their goal, to have all the hospitals working together. And the crazy part is that no one else right now has done this already. No one else has partnered with them to help the babies at Shalom Hospital. This is for us now in this moment. So that is just super exciting. I believe that God has placed in each of us a longing and a desire to accomplish something that's bigger than ourselves, something that without the hand of God would not be possible. And I encourage all of us, me included, to spend time in prayer this week and ask God what it is he has purposed for you to do for such a time as this. What God is calling you to now may be different from what he has called you to do in the past, or what he'll call you to do in the future. I'm excited, though, what an exciting thought as we consider this life that is where God places us and where we are called to do that it might change. Like what God called the Bells to do, 10, 20 years ago is not what they're called to do now, today, and may not be what they're called to do in the future. So for some, you may already be doing just what God has called you to do, and that is great. Some of you may know you are on the right track towards what he's called you to be. Others may be pretty convinced that what they're doing is not what God would call them to do, and you need to create some downtime where you allow your heart and mind to be open to hearing what that is, what he has for you, and what your purpose is. That's a whole message in and of itself, and you've heard Bob speak on it already regarding hearing from God. Esther is a great example of trusting that God has a big picture. Her mom and dad died. She was living with her cousin. He had taken her in as his own daughter. They were exiled. She wasn't even living in her own country. They were in Babylon due to repeated offenses from the Israelites against God. Once again, he was trying to get their attention. I bet never in a million years would she have thought that she might one day be a queen. Well, as it happened, you probably know the story. King Xerxes had a falling out with Queen Vashti. He banished her from her presence. A few years later, he put out a search for her replacement. As queen, Esther was one of the many taken into this fortified city to be given beauty treatments. As it turns out, Esther became queen, and perhaps she felt that that's what God had in store for her. End of story. I'm queen. This is where God has me. But that wasn't the end of the story. Just as it is for you and me, it was for Esther. God's not done with us yet. He had strategically placed her in that position for something much bigger. It wasn't until about 5 years later, a decree was passed to kill all the Jewish people in Babylon. Crazy. But I'm also learning that culture is big and strong, and that may well have just been the culture. No big deal. Just put out decrees like that. Esther herself being Jewish and all her people were at risk of total annihilation. Can you imagine? At one time thinking this is where God's placed you, and the very next moment realizing that you may soon die due to a decree by a king who doesn't even know your background. So Mordecai explained the situation to Esther, and he ends his words with, "And who knows but that you have come to a royal position for such a time as this." What Esther may have thought was a final destination where God had wanted was actually just the beginning. How exciting. As long as we keep under the direction of our loving Father, we can always be reassured that he will use us as we keep our hearts and minds open to him. Esther moved forward, but not before much prayer and fasting. In fact, she told Mordecai to tell the Jews in the whole city to pray and fast for 3 days and nights before she approached the king. And then even after approaching, she held 2 banquets. And if you haven't read the book of Esther in a while, I encourage you to do so. There's so much more detail presented in there before God created a rescue plan for his people. So you never know how the experiences and situations you're facing now will impact how God uses you in the future. I strongly believe that years my being a supervisor and a NICU nurse contribute greatly towards this trip, which was just the beginning of things to come. I would likely not have been so bold as to lead a group of ladies to a country I'd never known before if it had not been for the experiences in leadership and organization that I had gained over the nearly 15 years of supervisor and manager. It turns out there's a lot of moving parts to putting together a trip. Everything from plane tickets to applications to hotel rooms, travel insurance, electronic visas, supply gathering, lots of communication with folks who are getting ready to go to bed just as you're waking up and starting to think about plans. 2 years ago, I decided I needed to decrease my hours a bit and move back to bedside nursing. And to tell you the truth, this is where my heart has always been. Being able to refresh myself in the things of baby care since then has really been helpful in feeling like I can be a resource to Shalom Hospital. So you just never know. All right, to end, we often tend to want God to work on our timeline, and we want things to happen fast because waiting is not done well in our human nature. Some of you may be waiting for a baby. We know what that's like. Some of you may be waiting for salvation for a loved one, others for a secure job, others for the right person to live the rest of your life with, still others perhaps something more specific. I'm thankful that God works on his timeline rather than ours, and there's growth in the waiting. The call is for faithfulness no matter where you are at in this moment, and to be on the lookout for what God is stirring within you. In faith, I encourage you to take the next step toward your passion he's placed in you. Caution, be sure it's something that God has placed in you and it's not something you want apart from the will of God. This requires daily time in the Word and communion with God to know the difference. I want to leave you with this verse from Psalms 37. Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord and trust him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord. Wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger, turn from wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil. Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. Trust in the Lord. If we delight ourselves in the Lord, he will give us the desires of our heart. And the reality is that delighting in the Lord is spelled out in that whole passage. Trust in the Lord. Commit your way to the Lord. Be still before the Lord. As you are waiting still and wait patiently for him, he may change our heart and our passions to be in line with his, and he will give us the desires he has instilled in us. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I appreciate that very much. Thanks.